Okay, are we good to go? You're muted.
Not quite yet. I see it's still working.
Okay.
We are
Okay.
good to go.
Are we good to
Okay.
go? Good to go? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll call this meeting of the West Virginia Democratic Party Board of Appeals to order. I welcome you. Thank you for making time to be here today. Now, per our bylaws, Article 8, the members shall be appointed by the chair before January 15 of each calendar year and shall serve for a term of 1 year. Just for everyone to know, earlier this month, I reappointed the following members to the Board of Appeals: Susan Miley, Kelly Elkins, and David Thompson. And I want to thank you for your continued service. The bylaws provide that the chair of the party is the chair of the Board of Appeals. And for this part of the meeting. So I would now call the roll to establish a quorum. Susan Miley.
I'm here.
Kelly Elkins.
I'm here.
David Thompson. There he is. He's here. He's muted.
Yeah, he's here.
I see David's here. I see him waving. David Thompson's here, and I'm here. We have a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Before we get started, we'll begin with old business. So on January 2nd, 2023, this board heard and ruled on a grievance filed by Selena Vickers against the West Virginia Federation of Democratic Women. The board ruled that the West Virginia Federation of Democratic Women should comply with national and state party rules regarding open meetings and ensure that their bylaws provide compliance with national and state party rules and report back with updated bylaws to the Board of Appeals. It is my understanding that the West Virginia Federation of Democratic Women met on September 14th of last year. We've yet to receive a copy of their updated bylaws. I've drafted a letter to current president, Pam Van Horn, who is with us here today. And she's the newly seated president of the Federation, requesting that they provide us with their most updated bylaws by January 25th. I'll send this letter today, report back to the committee with the response that I received. Now, moving on to new business. Okay. A couple things before we get started. We've been working under the rules of procedure from the previous board, meaning before anyone here was appointed to it. However, those rules are lacking in areas. And at the last state executive committee meeting, I asked our Rules and Bylaws Committee to draft rules of procedure for this board. They have done this, and you will be receiving those draft rules soon. And I plan to call a meeting of the BOA so we can discuss and adopt the new rules. It was brought up during the meeting, and I think it was a good point. And when that was brought up by a committee member, we referred it to the Rules and Bylaws Committee. They've done their job. I didn't want to change the rules for this particular grievance. This grievance was filed last year, and I wanted to operate under the rules that everybody had expected. But we will meet soon to adopt the new rules of procedure. Also, as an update, to know what to expect over the next month or so, we did receive a grievance on January 8th from Jared Powell. He's the chair of the Marion County Democrats versus Jacob Hively. Expect to schedule a date to consider this grievance in the near future. Now, the last item on the agenda today is a grievance from Jacob Hively versus me. So due to me being a party in this grievance, I'm now going to recuse myself. Vice Chair Torseva will chair the hearing. So Teresa, it's all on you.
Thank you, Chair Pushkin. I can't remember what order everybody got on, so I'll just review very quickly how we'll proceed. We're going to have 15 minutes of presentation by Jacob Hively, 15 minutes of presentation by Chair Pushkin, and then 15 minutes of debate and question, or less, depending on the Board of Appeals need, and then a 3-minute summary by either side. And at the end of that, as has been requested, a clear motion in order. And I think obviously the motion just needs to be to address the requested relief in Mr. Hively's grievance, which is stated very clearly at the end of his grievance. So with that said, we will go ahead and allow Mr. Hively to proceed.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the panel. I'm Robin Godfrey. I'm a lawyer with and for Jacob Hively in Charleston here. I just want to tell you briefly what this is about. This sole narrow issue in this case is whether an individual can hold more than one proxy for voting at a state party election. This grievance is grounded, first of all, in the state party bylaws in the introduction, which says that the state party shall conduct its affairs in accordance with the national party's charter and bylaws. It's grounded as well then in the national party's bylaws and charter, Article 10, Section 3, which says each Democratic Party body shall conduct its affairs with rules that are consistent with the DNC. And finally, Article 2, Section 8G of the DNC states clearly and narrowly, no DNC member can hold more than one proxy. There is precedent for this. In fact, in the state party at the June 2022 meeting, when the parliamentarian ruled similarly that one individual can only hold one proxy, that ruling by the parliamentarian was accepted and therefore adopted by the chair of that meeting, who is the respondent today. There is also a reference to Robert's Rules of Order that I'll touch on just briefly. Robert's Rules actually frowns generally on proxies. It says proxy voting is not permitted in ordinary deliberative assemblies. It's incompatible with the characteristics of a deliberative assembly. So you look to the rules, and we will get into that at the end. But basically, the rules in the state party are silent on this, but they are not silent in the national rules that guide really what we do in all Democratic parties. And it says one person, one proxy. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Hively, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Appeals. On September 30th, 2023, the West Virginia State Democratic Executive Committee met in Weston, West Virginia. Upon the call of the roll, it was noted that multiple members carried more than one proxy. I raised an objection to that and asked the chair for clarification. The chair said that we were going to err on the side of caution and allow people to participate, while at the same time members were not allowed to participate by Zoom. But I raised a concern under Article 2, Section 8 of the DNC bylaws that regards proxy voting, that no DNC member may at any time hold or exercise for more than one other DNC member a proxy. In Article 10, Section 3 of the DNC bylaws, it mandates that state parties or any organization created under their charter must adopt written rules that are consistent with the charter and bylaws of the Democratic National Committee. On June 18th, 2022, I was present for a meeting currently employed as a data manager, where committee member Abe Saad attempted to transfer his vote to Sam Petsonk. It was ruled by the parliamentarian that since Sam Petsonk already carried a proxy for another member, he could not carry an additional proxy. I do have a video of that meeting from the official West Virginia Democratic Party YouTube that I would like to show right now, if permitted to share my screen. Madam Chair, may I share my screen?
Just 1 second, I'm working on it.
I'm sorry. Yes, I had my mute button on. Yes, I don't have control of that, but you certainly can if you'll just wait a sec.
Okay, I was just making sure. It's just a short 50-second clip.
Okay, great.
You should have the ability now to share your screen.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's see if that works.
I'm getting an error message, host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I see it now.
See, can all members see my screen?
Yes.
So I would just briefly explain the video. So in this is for the race of associate chair, Alyssa Lucas versus Laura Walker. And in this video, you will see the secretary call the roll. And when they call committee member Abe Sod's name, I alert the secretary that Abe has transferred his proxy to Sam Petzog. Kurt Zickefoos is filling in as parliamentarian for this meeting. And it's very clear that a member can only carry one proxy, as another member of the committee even asked for a clarification.
Sod? I'm sorry?
He makes Sam Petzog his proxy.
He can't, Sam Petzog already holds another proxy. Can't hold, you're not allowed to, I should make the ruling, that should be the parliamentarian, but you can only hold one proxy. Dave wanted to give his proxy to Sam Petzog, and Sam Petzog already has the proxy of another person. And you're only allowed to hold one additional vote as an elected member of the committee. And that's how our bylaws state. Okay. Susan Hubbard.
Thank you. I think it's very clear in the video that it's in clear violation. Our bylaws have not changed that particular section. I have gone back and checked the bylaws that were used because we did vote on changes on the 13th of May. That particular section has not changed. So it is outside of the precedent of the committee and the rules of the DNC to allow multiple proxy voting. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to my legal counsel.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call one witness, Pam Van Horn. Pam, can you
Sure.
hear us?
Sir, if you could wait just one moment. I'm so sorry. I just want to take up one matter with the board members on calling the witness, and this will not count against you in your time, which I'm trying to keep track of, to be fair. I just want to entertain, and it's for the Board of Appeals to decide. The bylaws say that the Board of Appeals will only hear from the grievant or anyone named as a party. I want to make sure that the Board of Appeals approves with hearing and taking of witnesses as testimony or a witness. Given that the bylaws say that we reviewed right as we were coming on. Do the Board of Appeals members, if you could weigh in on that. I don't want to assume, but I assume you want to hear from a witness.
I'm at a kind of a loss as to what the witness would be testifying to. I mean, what does she bring as far as a witness to what?
Well, I think I can answer that.
Thank you.
She has been involved with the State Democratic Party for 30 years, and her testimony will be solely about one person, one proxy.
She comes as an expert to the Democratic Party, then? Is that what you're stating? Because she's been a part of it?
Well, she's an expert, but she's also an actual fact witness because she has been there and she has seen how the meetings have been conducted for over 30 years.
Well, I think that's what a lot of us could attest to as far as being part of the Democratic Party for several years. So, I mean, like, I don't know if I mean, personally, I don't know if we need it, but that's just me. I'll let David and Kelly weigh in on that.
I personally don't have a problem. I'm sorry, I'm so hoarse under the weather right now, but I don't have a problem with it.
As long as they stay within their time parameters.
Understood. Very good. I think we can proceed. Thank you all for indulging me on that. I just wanted to be careful, and they will on the time. I stopped the time and I'll start it again now. Thank you for allowing us that brief discussion. You can proceed.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Pam, would you state your name and address, please?
Pam Van Horn, 817 Springdale Drive, Charleston.
What is your role and what positions have you held in the State Democratic Party?
I'm currently the president of the West Virginia Federation of Democratic Women. I previously served on the committee from 2019 to 2022 as 2nd Congressional District Vice President female. And then when I was president of the state Young Democrats from 1995 to 1999, I was on the state committee.
How long have you been involved with the state party?
30 years since I became vice president of the Young Democrats in 1994. I started attending the meetings regularly.
Over the years, about how many state meetings do you think you've attended?
Probably at least 50% of them. The last 15, 20 years, probably more than that.
How has this issue that we're talking today about been handled regarding how many proxies an individual member can hold for purposes of an election?
To my recollection, we've always just had one person, one proxy. And as a volunteer for the party, I remember making calls specifically to find people to carry proxies within a senatorial district if the person couldn't be there, for example, rather than having somebody who was already on the committee carrying the proxy. So I think we've tried to stay to that one proxy, one person rule over the years. Or maybe not rule is not the right word, but usage.
At any of the state meetings you've attended, has it ever been allowed that you recall for an attending member to hold more than one proxy?
I don't recall it. The first time was when we were in Weston that I can recall personally.
The issue that's before us today.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Have you discussed this with other people who've had long experience with the state party as well?
I did. I talked to Belinda Biafor and Pat Maroney, both past chairs, to see if they had any recollection of it. And then I also talked with Larry LaCourte just this morning, as a matter of fact, to see if he had any recollection. And he was a former executive director when George Karenbauer was the chair. And he doesn't recall doing that either. It's always been more of a one person, one proxy situation for our party.
Okay, is there anything else you want to offer regarding this issue as to how many proxies a state party member can hold for purposes of an election?
Well, I again go to the fairness rule just personally as a member of the Democratic Party and a member from time to time of this committee. And I hope that we can, and I'll also say that, our bylaws chair, Selena, had said at the meeting in Weston, she thought we should change it. So I hope we do. The Federation had given to our chair a update of our bylaws to include that. So hopefully that will be taken up soon with the bylaws committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing else of Ms. Van Horn, Madam Chair, and thank you for the members for allowing me to go forward with that.
Thank you, sir.
I think we're done. We have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We're going to just end it.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Madam Chair, I think we have 5 minutes left. We will go ahead and just end it early. We've concluded the argument.
Thank you. And thank you for being brief. It was a lot of information in a short amount of time. It's certainly appreciated by all the members of the committee, or the Board of Appeals, excuse me. And you had almost 6 minutes left. But with that, we will turn to Chair Mike Pushkin, who is the respondent in the grievance, to address the grievance. 1 second, Chair Pushkin. I want to start. Okay, very good. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm attempting to share a screen here. Let's see. Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
I can.
Yes.
Everybody good? Okay. Thank you. I'm a bit of a Luddite here. I'm gonna do my best to get through this, but I'm using a PowerPoint. And I appreciate everybody. When I ran for chair, the West Virginia Democratic Party was turning a corner. There have been several challenges filed with the DNC regarding closed meetings, meetings with little or no notice, failure to let West Virginia Democrats know about when elections were occurring so that people had a fair opportunity to run for party leadership. And it was revealed that the state party had not had a mandated affirmative action plan, although for decades that plan was mandated. One of the promises that I made when I ran for chair was to follow the rules of the party and give everyone a fair opportunity to participate. We had 7 elections scheduled for the September 30th meeting. we provided a 30-day notice with a full description of the positions that were available, qualification and the process for nominations and elections, the full transparency and fair opportunity for all to participate. We also have the most diverse state executive committee that we've ever had. For the first time ever, we've met the representative goal for every historically underrepresented group, with the exception of youth and people with disabilities. I'm very proud of the committee that we are building and the work that we continue to do. I appreciate the commitment of this board to fairness, and I feel confident that the information that I provided in my response, and I hope everybody had time to look at that, and that I'm going to summarize now, will provide you with the information that you need to settle the issue of this grievance. And let's see here. Okay. Over the next few minutes, I intend to prove to this board that the proxies had no effect on the outcome of the elections of vice chair, the first congressional district vice chair, and audit subcommittee. Two, the ruling of the chair to allow more than one proxy was correct. And three, there was no harm or injury to Mr. Hively. Seven elections were noticed. One to fill a vacancy in Senate District 11, one for the congressional district, first congressional district vice chair, and 5 for members of the audit committee. 2 of those elections were contested. Proxies had no effect on the outcome of those elections. There were 4 people that held more than one proxy, adding up to 11 proxies in question. 2 people held 2 proxies each. 1 person held 3 proxies. And the most proxies held by any one person was 4, and those were held by Troy Miller. All the proxies were received and reviewed for compliance with our bylaws before the meeting began. I received the question about carrying more than one proxy a few days before the meeting and had an opportunity to review the bylaws prior to the meeting. And we can look at this issue several ways. Clearest and cleanest scenario to definitively show that proxies had no effect on the outcome of the election is to eliminate all of the proxies that were carried by someone with more than one. This chart shows a hypothetical scenario where even if I had ruled that none of the proxies were allowed, the outcome of the vice chair race, its first congressional vice chair race, would not have changed. The information in the 2 blue columns are correct. I submitted all of the handwritten ballots for this race as Exhibit C. Of the members that were present and voting their own ballot, 25 voted for Klein and 6 voted for Kincaid. Of the individuals that carried and exercised only one proxy vote, 13 voted for Klein, 5 voted for Kincaid. The yellow column shows that the 4 individuals that held more than one proxy, but not exercising a proxy for this election. In this hypothetical, the total vote would be 38 votes for Klein and 11 for Kincaid. Even if those 4 people had not carried any proxies, Klein still would have won 38 to 11. This chart shows a similar hypothetical for the audit subcommittee race and shows that proxies did not affect the outcome of this election. The actual ballots were submitted as Exhibit D. The blue columns show the actual votes of members that were present and voting on their own ballot. 18 voted for Wilkes and 14 voted for Hively. Of the individuals that carried and exercised only one proxy vote, 9 voted for Wilkes and 9 voted for Hively. The yellow column shows the 4 individuals that held more than one proxy vote, not exercising a proxy for this election. The total votes would be 27 votes for Wilkes, 23 votes for Hively. Even if those 4 people had not carried any proxies, Wilkes still would have won 27 to 23. In both scenarios, the proxies did not have any effect on the outcome of this election. Now, as I mentioned, I received a question a few days before the September 30th meeting from a member stating that they had received a request from more than one person to be their proxy for the meeting. I reviewed our bylaws and confirmed that while we do have a geographical restriction on who can be a proxy, we do not have a limit on the number of proxies that can be assigned to proxy for members. This was the first fully in-person meeting since COVID. All 4 state executive committee members from Senate District 16 in the Eastern Panhandle asked Troy Miller to be their proxy. Troy is an at-large member. However, he lives in Senate District 16. This made him eligible to be a proxy for any state committee members representing Senate District 16. If I had ruled differently, I would have effectively denied an entire Senate district representation. Here are our bylaws related to proxies. Everybody see that? As you can see, the bylaws instruct elected members to appoint a proxy from their senatorial district. Our bylaws fall on the side of the rights of the members by giving them the right to name their proxy. There is nothing in the bylaws that restricts the number of proxies that a person can hold. If I had prevented Troy from carrying more than one proxy, I would have violated the rights of the members of Senate District 16. More importantly, I would have violated the rights of Democrats from that district to have representation. Furthermore, Hively claims that there is a precedent that the West Virginia Democratic Party has historically only allowed one proxy person. However, Hively has found no documentation of the ruling. However, after viewing the video, I believe I was chair for about 5 minutes at that point. The quote unquote parliamentarian at the time was not the elected parliamentarian. There simply wasn't a challenge to that decision, but that was not a formal ruling. However, even if there had been a previous ruling that a person can carry one proxy, that ruling was incorrect, and it would be an injustice to continue to do something in violation of the rights of members. There is, however, precedent of this state committee allowing for more than one proxy. This precedent was found in the 2016 West Virginia Democratic Party delegate selection plan. Three proxies were allowed. Not only did the state executive committee approve the rules, but they were sent to the DNC, and the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee approved the rules as well. This slide shows a section of the 2016 West Virginia Democratic Party delegate selection plan, which was approved by both the West Virginia Democratic Party State Executive Committee and the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee. It states an accredited participant in a caucus convention or committee meeting, after having appeared at such meeting and having established credentials, may register a non-transferable proxy with another duly accredited participant at that meeting, except where an accredited alternate is present, eligible to serve as a replacement, provided that no individual may hold more than 3 proxies at one time. Again, this plan was approved by the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee. So my ruling at the September 30th meeting was correct. It was the correct ruling. Hively correctly quotes the DNC Charter, Article 10, Section 2, which provides that each official body of the Democratic Party created under the authority of this charter shall adopt and conduct its affairs in accordance with the written rules, which rules shall be consistent with this charter, the bylaws, and the other provisions adopted pursuant to to authority of the charter, including resolutions and other actions of the National Convention. The West Virginia Democratic Party is required and does have written rules that are consistent with the National Charter and bylaws. Before we look at some of the specifics, I'd like to let you hear the co-chair of the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee discussing the intent of this section of the charter. The co-chair is James Roosevelt. He is the grandson of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and has been the co-chair of the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee for over 20 years. He is highly respected and is arguably one of the most knowledgeable persons about the rules of the DNC. Let me see if I can get this video.
Mike, it is not playing the sound.
I can't hear sound, right?
I'm sorry. I need to enable the sound.
Stop share.
I've paused your time. Technical
Thank
difficulties.
you.
Take
I
your time.
appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. Yeah.
Go to share screen. So, okay, I see what I did wrong. Back on the slide. Okay, let me see if this works. I apologize for that. And
The reason this does not trouble me is if
see if that
this does not trouble me is if you read this, it requires these bodies to conduct their affairs in accordance with written rules, which they've adopted, which rules must be consistent with these charter, with this charter and the bylaws, and resolutions adopted by the National Convention, that they have to operate under rules that are consistent. They can't be standing out there as an outlier to our rules regarding openness and diversity and so on. I don't think it gets into the minutia of rules about quorums and things like that. So I think that the intent is to make sure that the general principles followed and publicized at their rules are consistent with the DNC charter and bylaws.
Roosevelt specifically stated he did not think that the intent of this rule meant that state parties and recognized organizations had to follow every specific item in the charter in the DNC bylaws, such as what he termed as minutia. Roosevelt specifically mentioned quorum requirements in this video, and I'll point out that the proxies are listed in the same section of the DNC bylaws as quorum. That's Article 2, Section 8. It's clear from this discussion that the expectation is to comply with the spirit of openness, transparency, and inclusion. Now let's look at some specific bylaws to compare ones that are intended to be followed by DNC committee meetings and members and those that are intended for state parties.
The reason this does
Let
not
me
trouble
stop
me
this.
is if you
Sorry.
read this.
There we go. Okay. That bylaw about proxies that Hively relies on is Article 2 of the DNC bylaws. Here are all the sections of Article 2 as listed. I've highlighted Section 8 and Section 11 to show how the DNC bylaws for DNC members versus state parties compare. Section 8 is entitled Attendance and Quorum and Voting. This section details the Democratic Committee meetings and members related to attendance policy, quorum requirements for meetings and voting, including proxies. Section 11 is titled Participation in All Party Affairs. This section provides mandates of the national, state, and local parties related to diversity, inclusion, and transparency. There we go. 1 second. And this bylaw that Hively claims was violated, this is from Section 8 titled Attendance and Quorum and Voting. It says no DNC member may at any one time hold or exercise proxies for more than one other DNC member. Note this specifically refers to DNC members. Nowhere does it mention state parties. And here we are in the same Article 2, but now this section is Section 11 titled Participation in All Party Affairs. Here you can see highlighted mandates that are specific to state and local parties. The bylaws very clearly direct that state and local Democratic Party organizations shall undertake affirmative action programs. State parties shall increase the participation of low and moderate income persons. State parties shall require local units of the party to effectively publicize meetings. These bylaws provide very specific direction to state parties. This section is written very differently than Section 8, which is specific to DNC members and meetings. Here's another example from the National Charter. This section provides that all meetings are open to the public. It specifically mentions the DNC, the Executive Committee, and all other official party committees, commissions, and bodies. If the DNC had intended to require state parties to follow a specific proxy rule, then the proxy rule would have been written differently to clearly say that state parties shall limit proxies to one person. The DNC is very clear about what they expect the state parties and specifically state such in a charter. I'm sorry. DNC is very clear about what they expect the state parties and specifically state such in the charter and bylaws. The limit of one proxy per person is very clearly only required of DNC members at DNC meetings. The ruling that I made on September 30th was correct. Mr. Hively also alleged that I've failed to appoint a parliamentarian in the absence of our elected parliamentarian. First, per our bylaws, we elect our parliamentarian. I do not have the authority to appoint one. However, the role of the parliamentarian is to advise the chair. Robert's rules provide that the parliamentarian's role during a meeting is purely an advisory and consultative. Since parliamentary law gives to the chair alone the power to rule on questions of order or to answer parliamentary inquiries. As I mentioned, I received the question about someone carrying more than one proxy several days before the meeting, and we're clear that our bylaws allow for more than one proxy. Now, on top of not bringing the evidence to support this allegation, Mr. Hively did not state that he or the Young Democrats were harmed in any way. If I had ruled that proxies were not allowed, the outcome of all the votes taken at the meeting would not have changed in any way whatsoever. Mr. Hively would still have lost the vote to be on the audit subcommittee. It would have not have changed the outcome.
Chair Pushkin, you're at about 15 minutes. I'll give you a courtesy of a couple more minutes to wrap up.
All right. However, I'll go quickly. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right. However, let me go back here. However, denying an entire Senate district of representation would have been harmful. If I had ruled that Troy Miller could not carry the proxy of the 4 state executive committee members from Senate 16, representing over 19,000 Democrats, I would have denied them representation. And this is where the harm would have occurred. And interestingly enough, Troy evenly split the votes for both the vice chair position and the audit subcommittee in representing these members. Troy didn't take his vote and 4 proxies and use them for 5 votes. He voted his ballot and then based on either written or verbal instructions from the members. He exercised 2 votes for Klein, 2 votes for Kincaid, and then 2 votes for Wilkes and 2 votes, for Hively. And I'll end where I began. And I appreciate the little bit of extra time there. The proxies in question had no effect on the outcome of the 2 elections. The ruling of the chair to allow a member to hold more than one proxy was within our rules and was the correct ruling. There was no harm to Hively or the Young Democrats. And furthermore, to not allow the proxies would have denied 4 members and over 19,000 Democrats representation. So I'd ask that the grievance brought by Mr. Hively be dismissed with prejudice and that the elections held on September 30th stand. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair Pushkin. And I guess I'm chair of this Board of Appeals hearing, but Chair Pushkin is chair of the party. With that, we will move into discussion regarding the grievance. And I'll just start the discussion among the Board of Election members, Board of Appeals, by reading the requested relief by the grievant. And I think that's what needs to be considered. The elections held, the requested relief is specifically that the elections held on September 30, 2023 for Congressional District 1 Vice Chair Female and Audit Committee be declared null and void, and a new election be noticed and held in accordance with the bylaws of the Democratic Party of West Virginia and the Charter and bylaws of the Democratic Party of the United States. Now, I quoted that exactly out of the written grievance. So I think that's where our consideration lies, your consideration for the Board of Appeals. And with that, I think we'll turn the discussion over and for both discussion and questions, if you have them, to the members of the Board of Appeals.
I don't have any questions myself personally. I'm not sure about the other 2 members.
Thank you.
Am I muted?
You are on now, sir.
Chair Pushkin mentioned something in the context of the proxies about geographic limitation. I'm assuming that's the senatorial district. from which the electors are chosen? Can anyone answer that? Is that the geographic
Yeah.
limitation?
We do have geographic limitations on proxies. We do not have in our bylaws any limitation on the number of proxies, but you are limited to your senatorial district. And that's why Mr. Miller was the only one in attendance who could have carried those proxies. So by not counting those votes, that would have
All right,
kept
so
that entire district from having a voice.
so elector, the way I understand it, and I've actually carried a proxy on one occasion, been quite some time. Elector suggests a duly elected committee member from a county or subdivision of the Democratic Party, such as a county executive party. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
All right, let me make it simpler. Can any Democrat carry my proxy to a party election or election of officers or et cetera?
Within your Senate district.
Yeah, within your Senate district. That's something that could be addressed by the rule as our rules stand now. Correct.
So any Democrat, my neighbor, I suppose is a Democrat, they could carry my proxy.
So in there, yeah, limited by geography of the Senate district.
As long as they're part of the Democratic Party. Okay. So if and I'm just basically restating what you've already said in your chart, if the proxy votes, which were in excess of the one proxy, obviously you get to count one. I mean, under Mr. Hively's scenario, if the other proxies were excised from the vote, it wouldn't have changed the results. You've made that clear. Is that correct?
That is correct. It would not have changed the results.
But it would have the effect, in essence, of disenfranchising the proxies that you disallow, correct?
Yes. Had I ruled incorrectly and disallowed those proxies from being counted, yes, I would have disenfranchised the Democrats of this in one instance of the 16th senatorial district.
And I don't really, this is more of a rhetorical question, but how would you determine whose proxy gets counted and whose doesn't if you don't count them all?
Good question.
Yeah.
I don't think I could.
That's all I have.
However, but I think it's, once again, had I even if I made the incorrect ruling, in my opinion, to disallow those proxies and count, no matter how it's stacked up, lack of better terminology, if no proxies at all or one proxy per person, either way, the results were the same. Wilkes won, Pam Klein won.
Thank you.
And I have no questions.
Madam Chair, can I add something that may help add to the question that Mr. Thompson asked?
Yes, you can certainly address Mr. Thompson in this time period. That's what it's for. Thank you.
We have never at any point claimed that it would change the outcome of the election. What it is about is it's about fairness, about one person, one vote, and more important, it's about following the rules. I mean, it's very clearly stated in the DNC bylaws, and we very clearly say we will follow those. And as demonstrated by a YouTube video from a meeting not too long ago, that is the precedent of the committee, and that is what every committee member expects. And I have not talked to one committee member who thought that this was okay or thought that this was the norm. So I just wanted to clarify that we're not claiming that it would change the outcome of the election, because that doesn't matter. What does matter is fairness and following the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Hively.
I have a question for Mr. Hively then. Well, don't you think it's fair that people have their proxy counted when they direct someone to do it?
So I would say members are expected to attend meetings. I mean, that is expected when you run for a state position, you're
You
expected
also,
to.
but I'm talking about proxy specifically. When you believe that you have the right to give someone your proxy and you direct them on how to vote, do you think it's fair that they do that for you?
So you could not appoint a proxy that was in violation of DNC rules, which is what.
But you don't know that. You think that you're giving them their proxy. Do you think it's fair that then that they not be allowed to do that?
Miss Miley, that's why we're asking for the election to be, redone and properly noticed with 30 days so that members have time to find a proxy that's in accordance with the precedent and rules of the West Virginia Democratic Party and the rules of the DNC.
So you don't want to answer. If I give my proxy to someone and I direct them, and I think that that is not in violation of rules, then you're not saying, you do not want to say whether or not you think that's fair, that then all of a sudden your proxy and your vote would not count.
Well, Miss Miley, I mean, if the proxy was appointed in violation of the rules, it might not seem right, but that's the way the rules are written. And as Chair Pushkin has said, the Rules and Bylaws Committee is free to make changes to these.
I'm not saying you believe the rules are written that way. I do think that there's precedent on both sides personally. I know you brought Pam in to state otherwise, but as even Mike has shown that it has been, that there's been precedent in 2016, that there had been multiple people, there had been times when proxies had been used by, like, one person had multiple proxies. So I mean I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to make sure that we are clear where we stand on precedent for proxies, and I'm just wanting to make sure that that's clear.
Well, Ms. Miley, there is no precedent of multiple proxies on the state committee. When we talk about a delegate selection plan, that's at a convention, not at our state committee meetings. And I would just say it's a member's job to know the rules. I mean, I've done that. I've read our bylaws. I've read the state bylaws. I know my county committee bylaws. Members have a duty to know the rules, and they have a duty to attend meetings.
Well, they also have the ability to give proxies. That is literally part of what we are given as a member that has been attending them for years. That is absolutely something that we have been given multiple times whenever you couldn't attend, to make sure that your vote is counted, even though you can't be there.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you that members should be allowed to have a proxy as per the rules and the precedent. I mean, I'm not objecting to members having proxies. I'm objecting to members carrying multiple proxies, which violate the core principles of the Democratic Party and a deliberative body, which is one person, one vote, not one person, 4 votes, or one person, 7.
It's not that, but what you're stating is I personally believe a little bit of, it's not as clear as what it sounds, just in a sense of Troy Miller did not have, as a person, 4 votes. He was there on behalf of people that had asked him to vote on their behalf. And I do think that that is something that is clear. He wasn't himself, Troy, saying, I'm going to vote my decision on these things. He had clear direction on what he was supposed to do on behalf of other members. And I do believe that he did not think that he was violating rules himself. I do think that he felt that he was doing his part as a Democratic member to make sure that other members in his district had their voice heard. And that's just my opinion on how that went down. I don't think it would have been something that would have been malicious or intended as being harmful to the party or to anyone he was there as a proxy for. And that is my opinion. Now, I will say, if there are people that have problems with proxies, we could absolutely add that into the bylaws of the state Democratic Party to make it absolutely clear, 1 proxy per person, period. It's not in there that I could see. Do you see it in the state Democratic Party rules at all, that it says only 1 party proxy per person?
What the state Democratic Party rules say in their introduction is that they will conduct its affairs in accordance with the Democratic National Committee charter and bylaws.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying, here's the thing. No, don't mince words with me, Jacob. This is literally what I'm asking you is, per the proxy section, does it state that you can only have 1 proxy per person? There are many things that we do. And I will bring this in. We literally, as a grievance board, heard where the Democratic women had Selena Vickers taken out of a meeting, an open meeting that they had, and they felt that that was completely in accordance with the rules of the Democratic women. And so, I mean, you have people that look at things completely different. That is a common occurrence. We are not the National Democratic Party. That is clear. We have our own bylaws. That is absolutely clear. We do, in accordance with specific things, work underneath DNC rules, but we have our own bylaws. We really do. And that is absolutely true. And there are things like having a female and a male that represent certain things. There are things that we do live under, but I do think that as far as this, we have not made it clear. I don't think that this has been the end of the world. And I do believe that we have the absolute ability to make certain that this doesn't happen in the future if people do not want proxies to have multiple votes. I think that that is absolutely okay. And I actually wouldn't even have a problem with it if they want to add that to the party rules. That is okay by me. I just don't think that we should eliminate people's ability to vote when they think that they're doing what's right for themselves and by asking someone to be a proxy for them and eliminating their vote because of that. I don't think that that's right. I think we should have made it clear before they did that. And I don't think that, I mean, that's just me. So
I will say, I mean, I certainly don't know. The Democratic women are not involved in this grievance. I don't know.
You brought the president as your witness.
But I was not involved in any of that grievance regarding Ms. Vickers. So I think that's totally unrelated to this. I mean, what I will say is I think that it's clear based on our bylaws and based on it's a clear precedent. I showed a video of Chair Pushkin. It doesn't matter if he'd been chair for 5 minutes or 5 years. He has a duty when he ran for chair to understand the rules of the committee. He was chair. He chose to run for that. He should have known the rules then.
Well, I don't think that and here's the thing. I don't know how long you've been a part of the party, but I will say that throughout the history of my tenure, which has been more than 30 years, that I have seen people run meetings differently and they've called things differently throughout. We luckily have not ended up at grievance boards with it, but there have been a lot of different perceptions within parliamentarians themselves. I've seen that happen within different meetings. So I don't know if you are so cornered into this is what happens for the rest of the Democratic Party in the history of the world. I mean, that just doesn't work that way. But and here's the thing. I think you're trying to do what's right. I don't think that you're malicious in your intent either. I just think that this is one of those things where I don't think that we should discount votes for people that have thought that they were doing it within the rules. And so that's just kind of where I'm lying with it. But I don't know, Madam Vice Chair, like where we are at this point.
Yes, thank you. Well, I didn't want to interrupt this. We were doing exactly what we were supposed to be doing, which was giving you the opportunity to ask questions and engage in dialogue. We've done that for about 15 minutes, but I certainly am not going to cut anyone off on the board. Ms. Elkins, I know you didn't have any questions. I just want to give everybody, I guess, an opportunity if there are any additional questions before we move to the final summations of by 3 minutes by each side. So anyone else on the board want to contribute anything or ask any questions? Okay, hearing nothing and seeing nothing. So we will move into summation, 3 minutes by each side. Mr. Hively, or if you want to proceed, please feel free.
I'll share this with Mr. Hively this time.
Mr. Godfrey, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, the arguments about diversity, affirmative action, notice of hearings has nothing to do with this narrow issue before us, which is clearly spelled out. I've practiced law 45 years. I don't know how it could be clearer than it says one individual, one proxy. That's what it says. The hypotheticals that the respondent poses, this is pure speculation to say, well, it doesn't matter if we ran the election improperly, the result would have been the same. First of all, the duty is to run the election properly. And secondly, it's speculative to say what the outcome would have been. Third, you don't have to show harm to, this is not a no harm, no foul rule if you don't run the election properly, especially, and this touches on another point, the respondent keeps saying, well, the rules speak to it. The rules are silent. He wants to read into it what the rules say, and it ain't there. All it says is you follow the national rules, and they could not be clearer. And as far as Mr. Roosevelt's remarks, that was what we call dicta. That's his opinion, but it's not relevant here because their rules are so clear. As far as, and finally, the fact that the response says, well, this is just the DNC. You can't persuade me that the DNC we can have a lower standard than the DNC under which we are operating. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hively, and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will just say the election on September 30th is being followed by a cloud of unfairness. It violates the clear principles of a deliberative body and a democratic organization of one person, one vote. The issue at hand is very simple, and that is, does the West Virginia Democratic Party have to follow DNC bylaws, the DNC charter, and DNC procedure? I am asking the board to please overturn the election held on September 30th and to renotice the election properly and hold the meeting in accordance with West Virginia Democratic Party bylaws and the bylaws of the DNC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hively. Mr. Godfrey. Chair Pushkin, you can proceed now if you have 3 minutes of closing remarks.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the board, and I hope that everybody can hear me. Something was going on with my internet, and I couldn't hear all of Mr. Hively's closing remarks. But I will say our rules on proxy voting, the only thing that's clear about it are the link to the number. I would instruct the Rules and Bylaws Committee to clarify those rules. But as we were operating on that day on September 30th, I will stand by that. I made the correct ruling at that time to count all the votes and to be more inclusive and to let all of our members who wanted to vote have a say in those elections. As far as where we do have what the chair of the Rules and Bylaws Committee from the DNC was saying, what he was speaking about was the intent of the intent voting like in the spirit of the party, and that does apply to the spirit of inclusion, the spirit of open meetings, things like that. But I can give you another example of minutia that we don't follow. The DNC doesn't allow for electronic voting. The West Virginia Democratic Party has had Zoom meetings where we've allowed people to vote. That's one difference in regards to voting that I think is comparable to proxy voting. But the main point is this would not change the outcome of the election, whether you count it one proxy per person carrying a proxy or discount the proxies altogether. It still stays the same. So what I would ask is that the election stand and that we move on with the business of the party. That's recruiting good candidates and helping them win. That's what I would like to be doing with this time. So that's what I would ask, is that the motion be dismissed, the election stands, and we move on to the party business.
Chair Pushkin, thank you. With that, I think it's appropriate for the Board of Appeals to move into consideration of their final decision. I think it's also appropriate for one of the members to make a motion to move to that disposition. I will say that as the bylaws permit or declare, the chair is, I guess ceremonial is the wrong word, but not a voting member unless one of you is absent. All 3 members of the Board of Appeals are here. And so the decision belongs to the 3 of you, as you know.
I would move that we proceed to deliberation and consideration.
So moved. Okay, very good. And then who was that? You, Ms. Elkins?
No, Susan that seconded it.
Thank you. So, Ms. Miley, thank you. And so, Ms. Elkins, do you agree with that motion?
I do.
Okay, very good. And with that, I would ask for the Board of Appeals members to rule on the specific relief requested. I won't read it again unless you want me to. I think everyone has it in front of them and knows what it is they're dealing with. But to be clear, regarding whether or not these 2 elections will be declared null and void, or if the grievance would be dismissed, I think are the options. Without trying to impose sort of anything else on it.
Can I move to let the election stand?
Is that Ms. Elkins?
It is, yes.
I can't hear your voice because of your sickness. I'm sorry. Very good. Ms. Elkins has moved to let the election stand, which, if I understand it from my reading, would mean the grievance would be dismissed. I'll hear from the others.
I second it if that's the appropriate response.
I think it is. It's a little funny with three people, right? And all three of you vote. So 1, 2, 3. When you have a motion, I think, and then a second. That said, Mr. Elkins, or excuse me, sorry, Mr. Thompson.
I concur in the dismissal.
Very good. I think that resolves the issue of this grievance. As I understand it, I just want to restate it for clarity and to make sure I'm not misstating any intent of anyone on the board or of your vote. Is the grievance requesting that the elections held on September 30th, 2023 for Congressional District 1 Vice Chair, Female, and Audit Committee be declared null and void. That grievance is denied and dismissed, and the elections will stand per the ruling of Chair Pushkin, the chair of the party, who made the ruling that day. Is that everyone's understanding of the ruling?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, I believe that concludes the meeting. I believe this was the last item on the agenda. So with that said, hearing no objection, or unless there's something I'm missing, I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second.
Very good. Was that Ms. Miley on the second?
No, Kelly.
Sorry, Kelly. Getting this wrong.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I don't know how I tell Kelly.
I think
I'm like me when you're sick. What do we sound like on this?
right. There being no further business of the board and